So we are on the Rome Show. Welcome to the Rome Show podcast, powered by CT Update Media. Got Jim Beaver here. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing good, man. Life is good. I can't complain, man.
Right. I really appreciate you for taking time out coming on the podcast.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, when you reached out, I was stoked. I love doing interviews and sharing my story and talking with rad people. So stoked you reached out.
Right. No problem. Yeah, I came across your page and I really like what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. It's been a work in progress for over a decade now, but started out really small with a radio show about 10, 12 years ago, and it's kind of steamrolled into a media company now, and all my racing's funded and doing a lot of fun stuff. And just honestly been blessed to being surrounded by some amazing people and meet some awesome people.
Right. That's super cool. So from, radio into racing, how exactly did that happen?
Well, I guess the story behind the story is my dad was a racer. I grew up around racing and stuff like that. And when I turned 21, I started doing a little bit of racing myself and found out it's really expensive to go racing or do anything like that. And my family's not like independently wealthy or anything like that. So I kind of did a few races here and there, and was a guest on a couple of radio shows. And my sponsors that I had at the time were like, "Oh man, that was awesome! We got some really good value out of it," and things like that. So I was like, "All right, okay." And about that time was about 2010, 2011. I'd done like some fantasy football stuff with the local radio station, and podcasting was really kind of starting to catch on and stuff. So I kind of looked into doing I actually did it live the first 10, 5, 6, 7 years. But did like a live online kind of radio podcast thing, and just really fortunate when I started. I had some friends in racing and things like that, and got some really big guests on right out of the box, and it got traction. And back then, there really wasn't a whole lot of podcasts out there or online radio, so it was really easy to get an audience real quick. Now it's tough because there's so many different podcasts out there and online radio shows. So that kind of took off and had some big guests, and the numbers started rolling in. And after about a year or two, I actually got a couple of advertisers paying me a decent amount of money, so it's turned into a pretty good side hustle. And then a couple of years go by and things kept growing, and I was racing. It was fun in my racing, and things really kind of got going where I didn't have to have a real job anymore. I could actually just race and do radio and media stuff, and hired an employee to help me out. And yeah, I mean, been really fortunate to, have some really fun projects. I had a fun project called Star Car that had some celebrities come in, like Dak Shepard and Travis Pastrana, and I kind of took them racing with me. And at the same time, radio was going. I had a couple of series that needed a television host, so I kind of got a trial run doing some live on-site announcing, and steamrolled into television work. And yeah, and here we are, 12, 13 years later, and I'm still kind of doing it. Got a few employees, and still podcasting and doing radio and TV and racing, and doing a little consulting now with people kind of up and coming and stuff like that. So it's been fun, man. Just met some amazing people. And it's like I tell everybody, it's an industry, and of, whatever industry you're in, it's all about connections and meeting people, and that person knows somebody. And just takes a while to kind of build up, relationships and things like that. But yeah, I've been really fortunate.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Now, you're a racer. What's the fastest you ever went, like when you were on the road racing?
Well, see, our cars in the desert, our off-road trucks aren't like NASCAR where it's meant for top speed where you're going 200 miles an hour. These are meant to go fast and really rough stuff. So these cars go about 145 miles an hour, but we're talking about, over rocks and 3-foot whoops and stuff like that. So that's really fast over the terrain we're going over. Fastest I've ever actually been in a car I'm driving on the road, probably about 175 miles an hour. I probably should have been thrown in jail. But statute of limitations is up now, so I could talk about it. But yeah, I had it was a Shelby GT 500, and I got to drive one, and went out, and it was a stretch of road that I knew there was, it was pretty safe to do it in, and was able to, go about that fast. But yeah, our race cars that we have in the desert, I mean, there some of them, the UTV stuff, not much horsepower, a couple hundred horsepower. But the trophy trucks I've raced in the past, I mean, they're 900 horsepower, so we're talking big power. But they're meant to go fast over the whoop, so probably about 100 and 145. Some of them go 150, kind of right in that ballpark.
And you said that's like going over like rocks and stuff like that?
Yeah, through the silt, through rocks, boulders. I mean, just pretty much anything you can imagine. We'll be, when we race down in Mexico or some of the places in Nevada, they have silt beds, which is just soft sand. Sometimes that's 2 or 3 foot deep. It's like racing through a sandbox. And then you get into rocky sections, you got 3 foot boulders, and your trucks are crawling all over those. And then you get on some rally type roads, and you're just sliding them around sideways and stuff like that. And it's a ton of fun. I love it. Grew up around it. I'm fortunate, now that get to make a living, kind of having fun and racing race cars.
Super cool, bro. Love it. So you said you raced in Mexico and Nevada.
Yeah, most of our races, race in mainly Arizona, Nevada, um, California, and then in Mexico. Most of the off-road races for my discipline, which is desert racing. There's some other disciplines that run, different areas of the country, but ours are mainly those 3 states, and then also south of the border down there in Mexico, races like the Baja 500, the Baja 1000.
I mean, racing out there and being in those beautiful places. How'd that feel?
Man, it's awesome. That's one thing I love. Like we get to do what we call pre-running. So it's like you got to race like the Baja 500 that's down there in Mexico. You get to go around the course beforehand. You go down like a week beforehand, and you've got practice vehicles. So you get to go around the course. So some of those areas when you're running along the ocean or some of the mountains in Baja and stuff like that. Pre-running, it's not a race. You're just out there kind of taking notes on the course and GPSing it and things like that. So if you see something awesome, you get to pull over and really take it in and check out, shoot some photos. And that's what I love about that. Because when you're racing, you're going through some of the most beautiful places on earth, but you really can't, you don't have a chance to look at them. So that's where pre-running is a lot of fun, where, you can stop and check things out. Same thing with Nevada. I mean, there's some awesome place in Nevada where we'll be through some old mining towns. There'll be some old mine shafts and mining towns out in the middle of nowhere that, people haven't lived at for like 100 years. And, we get to stop and take them all in. It's kind of cool. I get to see areas of our country, and then in Mexico that most people don't get a chance to see. So that's kind of been kind of fun.
Yeah, super fire, bro. Love it.
Yeah.
Um, Now you still have a podcast and you're still podcasting the radio, the off-road pro racing. How do you find time to balance everything, including like your personal life?
Man, it's tough, especially when you're trying to get something off the ground. I know my radio show, man, it can consume you. You know what I mean? It's like trying to get that and put guests, and you got the social media going on and the website, and and it's like this vicious cycle. And there for a while, I was really fortunate. My wife was really supportive of me, things like that. It's like, hey, my whole family was like, hey, go out, chase this dream, and stuff like that. But now things are going. I've been fortunate enough to go, to be successful enough where I've got Matt and Chris who work for me. They help manage some of that stuff, the posting to social and the website, things like that. So that's been pretty tough. But it's like I tell everybody, it's like there's no 9 to 5 with this job. It's just, I'll have some celebrity will be like, hey, I can do an interview tonight at like 9 p.m. Well, if the celebrity can be available at 9 p.m., I got to be available at 9 p.m. because that's I'm fortunate enough they're much bigger star than I am, so it's like they're going to take time out of their schedule, and all right, I'll be available for them. So it's just one of those where there's no such thing as a 9 to 5. So you just when you do have time. You definitely take it. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the most important things I've found is, it's definitely carving out time. I've got a daughter, I'll sit down in the evening and we'll play Mario Kart, or we'll go-kart riding and stuff like that in the driveway, where it's, you got to make time, because if you don't, you're going to look back a decade later and go, man, where did all that time fly? But that being said, I love what I do. Really, really awesome to be able to balance everything. I mean, the podcasting, has been amazing. I've met so many amazing people through it. People that I looked up to, and then you do an interview and you get to know them. And a decade later, people like Travis Pastrana, who I consider a very close friend, and it's pretty amazing, the people that I get to meet. I mean, this, like, there's people that you've interviewed. You're like, oh man, this is kind of weird for me. This is somebody I looked up to, and
Right.
just really fortunate to be able to help people tell their stories. And, that's one of the things that, I don't consider work is when I get to sit down and whether I'm being interviewed or I'm interviewing somebody else, it's, that's the fun part of the job, but everything behind the scenes, sometimes that's a little tedious, but when you get to sit down, you get to mic up and you get to talk to somebody, that's where the fun comes in.
Right, super cool. And you said go-kart riding in a driveway. You must have a big driveway.
Well, well, these aren't like the race carts. I know there's these things called crazy carts, and they've got like a drift stick, and they only go like 10 miles an hour. But yeah, I
Oh,
do
okay.
at our race shop. We've got a big outdoor driveway area where everybody parks their cars and they're working on the race cars, stuff like that. So we move the cars out. But yeah, they're not super fast go karts, but they're fun. They got a little drift stick. They don't even have brakes in them, but you can drift them around and do spins and do 360s and things like that. So they've been a ton of fun with those, and we got two of them, and so her and I, we drift them around and have a little fun in the evenings.
So like for your podcast, like as can you give advice for somebody, who wants to start a podcast, like, and they're by themselves, and how can they make it go up a little bit to the next level?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing with podcasts, especially now, when I got started, like I said, I was really lucky because there wasn't a whole lot of people doing them. So, it was a little bit easier to get an audience. Now, I mean, there's tens of thousands of podcasts. I think one of the biggest things is you need to find a niche. You know what I mean? It's, find a niche and go after that. If you make something big, you know what I mean, that's, going after everything, it's going to be really hard. It's like, so you got to kind of find a niche and kind of go into that. But I tell everybody, don't plan on making money right out of the box. Don't do it as a job. Do it because you're passionate, because you love it. You want to talk to people. You want to tell your story. You want to tell their stories. I think if you do that, you know what I mean, and you're approaching it that way, at some point, if it's good, the money will come into play. But tell everybody, a lot of people get frustrated. They start out in the first one, they're like, oh, I only got, 5, 10 listeners to my first podcast, and I'm like, it takes time. You just, go and do it. Don't even pay attention to the numbers. Don't even look at the numbers for the first 6 months. Just go and do it. Practice. You'll get better as an interviewer. My first interviews when I started out, I've listened back to one about a year ago, and I'm like, man, this is bad. I don't know how anybody listened to me. I was like, this is horrible. So it's one of those, but your craft is going to get better as you continue on and things like that. So tell everybody, I'm like, just go and do it and start doing it. Because a lot of people go, I want to start a podcast, I want to start an online radio show, I want to start a YouTube channel. It's like everybody wants to, and it's like, you just need to go and do it. Once you do it and you get in a routine of regularly doing it, things will start falling into place. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's just like anybody. Everybody goes, "I want to lose weight," but they never want to start the diet. They never want to start going to the gym. It's like you gotta start. And once you start, it gets a whole lot easier from there.
Right. Um, I like to ask all my guests a motivational question. What's a few things that you do like on a day that you feel off to make yourself feel back on?
Man, one of the biggest things I do is I like driving. I mean, I drive for a living, or part of my job is driving. But sometimes when I'm off, it's just I need to take 5 minutes to reset myself. Even if I'm in my office or studio or whatever, it's like sometimes I get off a conference call or you get an email and you're like, man, it's stressed out. And it's like I'll just take 5 minutes, literally shut off the phone, just take some deep breaths and relax. Or if I've got 10 or 15, I'll jump in my truck and I'll just go for a drive around town. You know what I mean? And just listen to some music that I like, you know what I mean, and reset myself. And I think that's one of the big things. It's like you can get with whatever you're doing, you can get so caught up in it, and it's like sometimes it's like I've told my daughter, like when we're driving or something like that, I'm like, if there's ever a road you want to go down that you've never been down, or you see something you want to stop and see, I'm like, let's stop and see it. Like let's adventure a little bit. And I think people get so caught up in what they're doing. It's like they put their blinders on and they just completely ignore the outside world. I think that's one of those things like, we got to live a little bit. We got to take a step back, grab some fresh air, reset. Get your mind right, and then go back into it. Whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If you're waitressing, you're doing radio. You know what I mean? Work in sales. You're a construction worker. I mean, every once in a while, we just got to stop and take a deep breath.
Right. Good advice. So what's a few new things that your fans and the people could expect to see?
What coming up? I think coming up, a couple of big things I've got coming up. We've got some really fun guests coming on my radio show. And I think this year we changed it up. I kind of got in this vicious cycle of monotony and things like that. And I needed to really start podcasting, doing radio for me again. And so I did, and I'm doing some out of the box stuff. kind of guest wise that people might not be used to, but it's people I've always wanted to interview and things like that. So we got some of that coming up. Um, Got a new UTV that I'm building that we're filming up in Seattle, probably here in about a month. It's a release video. It's going to have me drifting around, doing some jumps, stuff like that. But it's a supercharged Kawasaki that nobody's ever seen before. We're calling it Electra. So we've got that vehicle that we're going to be debuting, and then probably one of the big ones. I've been working on it for about 6-8 months of the signature beer coming out. And so we're going to be launching that signature beer here in about a month. It's in the tanks right now in Southern California, working on the artwork for the cans, and that'll start being in grocery stores nationwide here in the next month or two. So yeah, I guess in the next couple of months, I've got some big stuff, some launch parties around the beer and stuff like that, some fun bands that we're going to bring in. So if you're in the Southwest, definitely stay tuned for that. If you're nationwide, they'll be in grocery stores and places like that here throughout the year. So, got new signature beer coming too.
Super dope. You got super big things coming.
Yeah, definitely been blessed. Like I said at the beginning, it's just all in connections and knowing people, and it's all about networking. Regardless of what you're doing, it's all about getting to know people and networking. And that person knows somebody who knows somebody, and you meet somebody, and something might not happen, and you might take 3 or 4 years, and then they'll think, "Ah, I remember this guy. I remember that. Hey, maybe we can use him for this project." And that's kind of way I've been really fortunate. Things were a little slow going here about 10, 12 years ago when I got started, but now things are definitely cranking. And like I said, I've been really fortunate.
Love it, bro. Love it, bro. Super cool. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate you for coming on the podcast.
All right, man. I appreciate it. You ever need anything, feel free to reach out, buddy. And, thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Love it, bro. Thank you. Really appreciate you.
All right. Take it easy.
All right, Jim. Take care. Peace.
Take it easy.